Hello and a warm welcome to the AI with Arun Show. How are AI tools revolutionizing the tech landscape, impacting various job roles like product managers and engineers? What are the pros and cons of the AI tools? How can job seekers and professionals navigate the evolving tech landscape influenced by AI tools? These are the questions that we'll address in this three-part podcast book series with a very special guest, Yash Sharma, today. Yash is a machine learning software engineer at Google YouTube, where he leads the development of AI infrastructure for abuse detection. He also worked on the Google Assistant team before, where he built custom ML models for conversational abuse detection. He loves solving problems, and he has built two open source projects, ML Topic and Linked Lens. He's also built a financial health app, which he calls Plutus. These personal projects help him learn and try out the latest technologies. So, Yash, a very warm welcome to our show.
Thank you, Arun. Really happy to be here.
Awesome. So, let's just get started, Yash. So, Yash, how have these AI tools changed the way people work in tech today?
Yeah, I think so. First of all, I need to mention that AI tools are not new, right? We have had AI tools before. There have been tools like AutoML long before these LLMs showed up. There have been tools like autocomplete for engineers where you start typing something and they'll suggest the next piece of code. So that has been happening forever. And now I see these LLMs coming in and really changing and revolutionizing the way we work. So I feel LLMs are just supercharging this revolution where tech people working in tech are able to use it. And I feel these tools are very different, wherein they have much more capabilities compared to the older tools, and they are much more capable of understanding your needs if used correctly, right? Which is what we would discuss. And they can impact pretty much every role, not just if you're coding or not. They can impact like engineers, product roles, product managers, management roles, even communication, so on and so forth. And I feel like before it used to be that, I know something about engineering and I maybe, need some help with some similar topic. Now I'm seeing these tools kind of bleed into intra role versus inter role help as well. So I can as well ask, I'm not a product manager, but I can ask these AI tools to, do some product manager work. So I think that way I feel it's a very exciting time where, things are moving very fast, but I feel there'll be like significant impact in a few years, and we are very early in that revolution.
So thank you, Yash. Yes, so let's drill down on a little bit on that a little bit. So let's talk about some specific roles like engineers, product managers, or technical TPMs. How do you see AI impacting these kinds of roles? If you can talk to our viewers in a little more detail.
Yeah, so I think in my opinion, anything which is repeated can be automated now, especially with these AI tools and their capability to use other tools. That opens the door for a lot of automation, right? So, for example, like for engineering, when you start coding a software, there's a lot of boilerplate which needs to be done, right? You would have wherever you're working, your company would have specific kind of testing criteria, specific libraries which you use. So AI tools can kind of go through your code base, understand what is needed, and then do that for you every day for a new project or a new model which you're working on. I would also like to mention a product manager example. Because I'm not a product manager, I feel this is a pretty exciting space where I'm able to do these things which I was not able to. So like when you're building a feature and you want to understand how to build it, why to build it, as a product manager, you can enter 1,000 reviews about a product area into an LLM and ask questions like, what kind of pain points are people feeling about it? And LLM can easily go through it in a structured way and provide you, distinct kind of personas of users, right? Who are having trouble. Like some may be struggling with latency, some may be struggling with your completion of shopping cart. So I feel those kind of things are also being enabled by these LLMs. Specifically, I use this a lot when I built my app, Plutus. So it's a financial app which tells you your financial health, right? You put in all your transactions of every day, what you're buying, how you're investing, and then it can tell you how you're doing and, compared to the market, how's your saving rate. So I'm new to all these. I am from a abuse detection side in tech, never worked in finance. So there's a lot of these, intricate things which I need to know: how to process a transaction, what is the standard of doing this, how do you add dividends when you get it, when does the dividend come into your account, those kind of things. And these tools kind of help me. So I feel like that way these tools are a game changer. And not just planning and brainstorming, that's the example which I gave, but I think they are helping in implementation, testing, validation, deployment, even communication, like, creating a summary of what you did, those kind of things.
Great. So yes, so looks like a product manager, and then we are drilling down on the product manager example here. So product manager can be far more effective using an AI tool versus not using an AI tool. So help our viewers understand, what was not possible before versus what is possible today using an AI tool, particularly for a product manager.
Yeah, so I think what was not possible before is basically, you need to know what you are searching for or what you're doing, right? When it's a new concept which you want to implement, you need to go for like a few days, study that concept inside out, and then you are able to. What these AI tools are enabling is you can actually implement things or use things which you don't know about, right? You can put in your thoughts, and these models these days, kind of they are creeping towards the world model level where they know everything which is happening in the world. And that is where it opens up like to your imagination. You can ask the tool to do whatever you think is possible or even not possible. Sometimes, these tools have built-in functionalities called deep research, where you just give in a problem statement and these tools can then go out, figure out if people are solving similar problems in similar spaces, and give you ideas where you can learn from those. So I feel this is what it is enabling. It is kind of shortening your learning time about a new concept or a new idea from days or weeks to just hours, or at times just minutes, if you're okay quickly implementing without knowing the details. And B, it is helping you learn from other people in the same field which might be doing that. Like for example, in my case, tons of people are building financial app. They are really successful financial apps there. So I could just learn from all of them within 3 hours and figure out, oh, these are the kind of problems which most of them face. This is what they don't face. This has been solved this way. So I think that is what is exciting, where it's like shortening the learning times and then you can learn from others instantaneously. As in, like, imagine 100 experts sitting with you and chatting. You can just get answers.
Yeah. So, so yes, deep research is one thing that you mentioned in these LLMs that we could potentially use. What are some of the other tools or some of the other guardrails that you would have? Because it's very easy to get distracted. For example, in your case, when you build the financial app, as developers or product managers are trying to build more intricate knowledge of something that they're not fully aware of, where it might require them to do some deep dives, to learn from other, either watch some YouTube videos or learn some other take some other courses in order to be more knowledgeable about certain things. But in this case, to your point, they can use examples like deep research to learn more. What are some of the other guardrails that they should be focused on so that they don't get distracted or they get the right kind of information? Because hallucination, we also know, is again not so uncommon.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's good and bad of these tools, right? I feel how I think of it is as these tools give you unlimited junior employees, right? So you give a task which is very well defined to these tools, which could be, research about this topic, or as an engineer, I could say research about React 17, right? And then it would come back and tell me, hey, these are the updates. This is what you can do with React 17, which you could not do with 16. But the task has to be very well scoped out, very well defined. I think that is where the cons come in, where you try to give it a bigger task which has a lot of assumptions built in, and then these AI tools might not know about your constraint. What is your specific need? Why are you doing that? Maybe you're working in a company which has certain criteria about security, vulnerabilities, data practices. So I think prompting is kind of becoming a skill, right? Where you need to know how much to tell an AI tool, which kind of tasks you can offload. And I think that is where your experience also comes in, right? Like you need to know what you're working on. Like if you're pretty new to software engineering or product management, it's very easy to, as you said, get misguided by a tool and go into a rabbit hole. And even with hallucinations, like one way is when you read through the answers, you kind of understand like this is not right what I wanted, right? This might not exist. So like it's very important to prompt and give it the right information, because these tools are kind of black boxes, right? You don't know how it works. You don't know it's thinking a lot. You just know something happened and this is the response. So now it's your responsibility as a user to trust that response and how much you want to trust it, and then use it the way you can. So I think that's where we would like we should also talk about in later sections how these tool works, how they affect the results, what happens behind the scenes. But I feel like there's a pros and cons, and you really need to like know how to prompt and how to use these tools in what stages.
Yeah, I like the way you called it out that Yash, that these are like junior employees. So for people who are listening in, this is a very important differentiation. The AI tools that are there today will help you enable yourself, right? So you can't, for example, and Yash, actually, let me ask you this: would it be fair to say that I, as an employer, can't hire an AI product manager, right? I need to hire a true product manager and enable her or him with AI tools so that the person can be more effective. Is that a fair way of assessing it?
Yeah, I would 100% agree to that. I think so. AI, I feel like using AI and using LLMs is a skill which adds on to your existing skill set. It is not a standalone skill set where I'm an AI engineer from start. I don't know real engineering. I mean, real is maybe a wrong word, but the current engineering like back end, front end, building systems. So AI tools just make you better at what you're doing. They cannot, I feel, replace anyone as of now at least. And I have seen like if you know how to use them, if you are a good engineer, then you can become a great engineer and also do other things. But if you're not, like, you don't understand engineering to start with, then I feel it's often like these tools are not that useful. They might be useful in creating a demo here and there, but things start breaking down when you're building systems for scale. At least that's what I am also seeing. If I'm not a product manager, which I'm not, I cannot do all the work or tasks of a product manager, say at Google, who might be doing it just by using LLM tools or AI tools.
Got it. Right. So yes, you have created so many projects both at work and outside of work. How have you used these AI tools in your various roles? So when you're developing a product, you are playing all single role. You are also the product manager. You are the developer. You are the tester. Right? You're wearing multiple hats at the same time. To give us an example on your various roles that you played, how did AI enable your that role, and how did your role become better with the use of AI?
Yeah, I think these like I feel I'm able to cut short my overall building time because of these AI tools by something like 90 if I use them versus if I don't use them. So I can give an example in terms of like say I'm building a module to add say dividends to my. This was a real thing, right? Like so the first thing is if I didn't have AI tools, I'll have to excuse me, I'll have to go in, understand, how the financial industry works, how the transactions are processed every day. There's a specific order, right, in which you can add a dividend to your account. It goes into your cash flow. So I understand some basics of it because I'm a user of these existing brokerage tools. But these AI tools really help me understand the actual formulas which they use, the industry specifics, and then implement those in the software engineering perspective. So, how do you convert that formula into code and then how you test it out? And then these AI tools can help me by, I could ask them what kind of libraries I could use to test this. Again, not being from a financial background, if I didn't have these AI tools, I have to spend days doing that research, figuring out, what to do, what I can use, what I can't use, how to compare A versus B. But these AI tools kind of, fast forwarded it. And the same thing happens with each stage of software development. Like I just talked about coding. Deployment is another stage, right? Where you need to do a lot of work. You need to figure out how to connect to a cloud. How do you deploy? How do you Dockerize your containers or software? When does the deployment happen? What time of the day? How do you balance traffic when you're moving from one version to other? So at each stage, these AI tools kind of help me figure out, give me a best practice in the industry. This is what most people do. But given the caveat, I can put in the AI tools that this is a hobby project. I'm expecting maybe 10 to 20 users. Based on that, give me these responses. So it can tell me, like, based on your traffic, you can just do this. You don't need a very complicated load balancer, so on and so forth. So this is from an engineering perspective. And then again, from product and usability perspective or testing perspective, you can, it's very easy to get industry standards into your project. Like if the industry has been using certain test practices, which I don't know, or say because I'm not aware, because I often work at Google, which has its own testing practices, right? Then it's very easy for me to figure out what happens outside in startups or, in this other world. So I feel, yeah, overall, it makes me a lot faster. But again, I feel like, as we talked about earlier, you would pay more attention, or I would also pay more attention if I'm building a software to sell to someone and I'm expecting 10,000 users on it. But since it's a hobby project, it's a few users, I can afford to have some inefficiencies. And so it's very different when you use this tool from 0 to 1 kind of work versus 1 to 10. Yeah, but pros and cons on both.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. That's excellent, Josh. And understanding those landscape is extremely important in terms of how we can actually use AI. So let's talk about the risks, and you sort of alluded to that earlier, the risks and problems. What happens? What can go wrong if I try to use an AI tool for a certain role which I really don't understand? For example, let's say I'm not an engineer, and I'm trying to build a product that requires deep engineering expertise, and I use a tool like Replit or others to build those tools. So what can go wrong?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest worry which I have, at least, when I use these tools, specifically, when I use them at Google, because we are building systems for scale. I work on YouTube, and for each feature we use, we have like hundreds and thousands of users using those systems pretty much every hour. So I think my biggest worry is the black boxness of these AI tools, right? They are not very deterministic compared to the AI tools of few years ago. So for your input, if you do it 2 times or 3 times, your results will be different every time. So kind of trusting these tools becomes a worry. But I feel like that's a transition where right now these tools are new and they can make mistakes. So as of now, you need to worry about the black boxness, or that the hidden feature which they have, where you don't know how things are. Maybe at some point in future, these tools become deterministic and so trustable that we can use them blindly. But I feel here the worry is that, where is the response correct? And as a user, I need to understand when to trust the response and when to say, like, I feel there's something fishy here, right? I don't trust these responses. This seems too good to be true, and I do a double check. The other thing which I worry about is, am I giving in the right prompts, right context, right? Often I have to code within the context of my team or my org. Like, there are certain libraries which you can use. There are certain libraries which have been used in the code before. So this particular example has actually happened to me in my personal app, where I'm coding something, and maybe on a different page a different library was used for the same functionality. But AI tools, not knowing that context, they'll use a different library for the same functionality. So your project has two libraries being used for the same function with their pros and cons, right? So that leads to inefficiencies, inconsistencies, first of all, and higher builds, for example, because you are now importing two libraries where one would have been enough. So I feel like this abstraction away of the details of implementation or the response generation is what kind of worries me. And often, like, if the examples which I'm giving are single examples where we might feel right now it's not that big of a deal, right? You have two libraries, so what? But when you think about this at scale, like say 100 engineers doing that every day for 6 months, then with that amount of time spent using these AI tools, and if you're not careful, you can actually build a lot of brittleness into your software, or vulnerabilities or risks, which can be really problematic in future, right? When you start scaling, and specifically software becomes very much more different and difficult when it scales. Like, having hundreds and thousands of files for a complicated software like we have on YouTube is much more difficult to parse and use AI tools on than my hobby project, which is pretty straightforward. It is new. There's maybe 100 files. Yeah, so I hope that kind of addresses some of the things which you
Yeah,
talked
it does. It does. Yes, so let's talk a little bit outside of LLMs. So you spoke in depth about how LLMs are used to make people productive, and of course to enable them to do various kinds of things. What are some of the other tools that, as a developer, as a product manager, or other roles, I could use other than LLMs?
Yeah, so I think LLMs is kind of a hand waving which we do, where we feel like, oh, this tool has an LLM, so it must be really good to use. I feel like many companies are building just tools meant for specific things, which could or could not use LLMs in the background, right? Like, so one example is simple, like code completion. Those kind of things have been substituted by these GitHub Copilot and these kind of tools which are based on LLMs. But there are other tools which are improving and increasing in the amount of benefit they can give to user. Things like AutoML. Like, for engineers, I feel those tools traditionally don't use LLMs, but they are becoming really good because some part of them in the background might be integrating LLM. So I feel for each task, new tools are coming up. Specifically for planning and execution, you'll see a lot of tools coming up. For example, Jira has a lot of these tools. And I would say we should think of using these tools from our task perspective, right? So for planning, I have different tools which I can use. I can give in my thought structure, create a structure around my plan, create a structure around my design doc. For communication, we could use certain kinds of tools which can help us summarize what we have done, help us track what has happened, take meeting notes, these kind of things. And for execution, there's certain kind of tools. For validation, testing, there's certain kind of tools. So I feel like, as users, we might not need to know, as these tools improve, we don't really need to know like those details. We should instead focus on what task do I have, and for this kind of task, which is the best suited tool, which has the right context, and it's built for that purpose.
Got it. So for my viewers, in our next episode, like I said, this is a three-part podcast book. So in our next episode, we'll talk a little bit more about the tools that Yash would recommend using in different kinds of capacities. But for now, this would suffice, Yash. This is helpful. So Yash, let's wrap up. Let's talk about what tips would you have for someone who wants to use AI tools, be it LLMs or be it non-LLMs.
Yeah, I think the one takeaway, if I could, is I feel like there's a lot of feeling of automation happening, and we often think automation might take away our jobs. Will I be relevant? At least I have thought so. I feel the bigger fear is being automated away by humans who can use these tools better than me. I feel that's a real risk than being automated away by a tool itself without a human involved. So I think for people, the biggest takeaway would be use these tools as much as you can. And we should all learn about their pros and cons, understand where they can actually help, how they can help, and what are the places where we need to be cautious and use them wisely, maybe use other tools, not these AI tools. So yeah, I think personally, I would think that's one takeaway which is very important. And I hope like you and me can also stay on this and, use these tools to our advantage than actually getting automated away.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. We keep hearing and from pretty much a lot of people who really know AI is that we'll be replaced by people who use AI better than people who don't use AI or don't want to use AI.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then one more thing to add, I think, as you also mentioned and we also discussed, is like the critical skills of your job are still important. It does feel somewhere that, as a software engineer, I don't really need to understand how code works, right? How the underlying code works, or if I'm solving, data structure or algorithm kind of problems, I don't really need to know the details. But I think knowing those underlying details is what will make the difference, right? So and this is not just true, I feel, in tech industry, but in across all industries, right? Like one example which I often talk about is, since I also do photography on the side, right? To take photos in 1800s or 1900s, you need to know how to run a camera, right? Open the shutter, open it for just a few milliseconds, close it. Today we don't need that. We take our phones and just tap a button and a photo is taken. But still, a photographer who understands how we can use light, how if you open the shutter for a longer time, you can really get amazing photo here. They do much better even today when they use a smartphone camera, right? So they are able to use these smart tools today, but they understand the underlying concept, and that makes them a better photographer than me, who has no idea and just keeps clicking photos. So I feel the same would be true in tech industry as well. So we need to know our basics well and then use AI tools cautiously, and that would make me relevant and useful for future.
Yeah, that was excellent. Yeah, thank you so much for my viewers. This was episode 1. In the second episode, we'll cover specifically on what tools will make you far more effective. So we'll go into the intricacies of some of the tools. Thank you, Yash. This is very helpful and appreciate the insights.
Yeah, thank you, Arun. Talk to you later.
Bye then.